Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere ake nei. A man is in custody after two people were fatally shot in West Auckland this afternoon. We're live to the scene. Go to the back of the queue. Some outpatient procedures at Christchurch Hospital are postponed as it strains at the seams. Meanwhile, the city's new stadium will cost a pretty penny, so is it time to pass the hat around for other South Island ratepayers to kick in? Police investigate whether Ivana Trump, the ex-wife of former US President Donald Trump, died after falling down a staircase in her New York home. And how much does it cost to make a burger? A Wellington pub does the maths and reckons it's $9.76 worth of tasty goodness.
RNZ News at 5. Good afternoon. Ahi Marie, ko Evie Ashton tēnei. Two people have been killed in a shooting in Auckland this afternoon. The police say they responded to a report of a gunshot outside a house in Glendine. Hamish Cardwell has more.
On arrival, officers found two people dead. Cordons are in place on Barry's Road and locals are asked to avoid the scene. The New Zealand Herald is reporting that heavily armed police have detained two people in nearby Te Atatu Peninsula, but police are yet to confirm this. The Police Eagle helicopter is hovering over the area. Officers want witnesses to contact them or talk to them at the scene. Auckland Transport says buses have been diverted from the area. There's been a spate of shootings in the city in recent months.
Auckland University epidemiologist Rod Jackson says a change in public attitude to mask wearing is needed now to save lives. The government yesterday increased availability of medical masks and tests to combat the rising wave of COVID cases, but stopped short of reintroducing mask mandates. Dr Jackson says COVID is currently accounting for about 1 in 10 deaths, and mask wearing is one of the easiest and most effective ways to reduce transmission.
We need to find ways right now, not only in New Zealand, but right around the world, to reduce the speed of spread of these new variants because they're overwhelming health services.
Rod Jackson says the current attitude to mask wearing is concerning and reintroducing mandates may be needed. The Ministry of Health has reported 10,470 new COVID-19 community cases today. 16 virus-related deaths have also been reported. 773 people are currently in hospital with the virus, including 14 in intensive care or a high-dependency unit. The 7-day rolling average of cases is just under 10,000. Damaging heavy swells continue to hit the Cook Islands. The country's meteorological service says both northern and southern parts are expected to get another lashing of wild weather overnight as a high-pressure system pushes strong winds over the country. Infrastructure has already been damaged after unexpected sea surges hit the coast over the past 2 days. High swells and wind waves are expected to cause additional coastal flooding overnight. A strong wind warning, damaging heavy swell warning and a coastal inundation warning are in place for the open waters of both southern and northern Cook Islands. One moment, please. I'm just getting my... There we go. Northland's Regional Economic Development Agency says the huge potential economic boon from a proposed port expansion will only be possible with government help. A report commissioned by Northland Incorporated has found Northport's expansion could create 1,500 jobs by 2060, plus more than 1,000 through a shipyard and dry dock development. Acting Chief Executive Vaughan Cooper says job creation of this scale will have ripple effects across the whole region. He says, however, the potential economic benefits are contingent on supporting infrastructure being completed, several of which rely on central government decisions. These include a rail spur to Northport and better roading connectivity to Auckland. Local government New Zealand is warning drinking water supplies they will face significant fines if they continue to have contaminated water. They will face significant fines if they continue to have contaminated water. This follows the first report from Water Services regulator Taumata Arowai, which says about 300 suppliers had water containing unsafe levels of chemicals or bacteria. Local Government NZ's President, Stuart Crosby, says some councils and smaller water suppliers have a lot of work to do.
And it's important that all councils understand what their requirements are the investment required, and there will be consequences if they do not meet those.
To sport, and All Blacks captain Sam Cane has likened the side's build-up to Saturday's series decider against Ireland to a World Cup playoff. Having levelled the three-match series at 1-1 in Dunedin last weekend, Ireland could enjoy an historic series win in New Zealand with victory in Wellington tomorrow night. Cane believes the pressure they're under now will ultimately be beneficial come next year's World Cup in France.
The situation's not what we wanted it, but now we look at it and embrace it. Like it's a good challenge for us. It's do or die. It's just like World Cup stuff, and looking forward to it.
The Black Caps bowler Adam Milne has been ruled out of the remainder of the team's European tour with an Achilles injury. Jacob Duffy will now stay with the team for the T20 series against Ireland and tours to Scotland and the Netherlands. The Black Caps are tonight chasing a clean sweep of the ODI series against Ireland. And organisers of the World Athletics Championships are desperately trying to help clear a visa logjam that's threatening to prevent around 100 athletes, coaches and officials from entering the US for the event. World Athletics left the window for qualification open until very close to the start of competition, but it's meant many athletes didn't start the visa application process until late. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, Professor Leo Upi grew up in the last Stalinist outpost in Europe, Albania. Then she found out everything had been a lie. But did free market capitalism tell the truth? Is a misspent youth ever really misspent on a writer? Kate Camp's extremely frank memoir suggests not. And Bob Whitey's documentary on his friend and hero Kurt Vonnegut. So it goes. Call Kim Hillaho. Join me tomorrow morning on RNZ National.
You're on Checkpoint with Lisa Owen next. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Saturday. From Northland to Whanganui, including Coromandel Peninsula, Taumarunui and Taihape. A few showers, some heavy tomorrow from Waikato northwards. For Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay. A few showers, mainly in Bay of Plenty and the Gisborne Ranges, clearing overnight or early tomorrow. Isolated showers are developing about the east coast tomorrow. From Manawatu to Wellington, also for Waded Upper. A few showers clearing tomorrow morning, but isolated showers remain about coastal Waded Upper. For Bulla and Westland, fine spells. A few showers about northern Westland and Bulla. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, scattered showers gradually clearing today, becoming fine tomorrow. Fiordland, Otago and Southland, showers with snow above 500 metres. Showers are clearing inland tomorrow morning and fine spells are developing. And for Rekohu, the Chatham Islands, showers, some heavy tomorrow afternoon. The time is 7 minutes past 5. I'll update you with the latest headlines and traffic at about 5:20.
Nā mihi iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. In a moment, Christchurch Hospital postpones outpatient appointments to ease the burden of winter illness. And who should pay for the city's new stadium? But we begin tonight with breaking news. 2 people are dead after a shooting in Auckland this afternoon. Our reporter Nick Trubridge is on Barry's Road in Glendine. Nick, what more can you tell us?
Hey, kia ora, Lisa. Yeah, as you say, I'm just standing at Barry's Road in Glendine. Seeing cordons still in place here. We've actually just got a statement from Waitemata Inspector John Sutton of the Waitemata CAB, basically saying that one person has been taken into custody in the last few minutes. Homicide investigation now underway after, of course, those 2 bodies were found in that property on Barry's Road. The person was arrested in Te Atatu. There was another couple of scenes over there, and we were actually attracted over there earlier because we could see the Eagle helicopter flying overhead. Police saying cordons will remain in place on Barry's Road for some time. Obviously, very early days in this investigation, and I guess just for some context, it's obviously one of a raft of shootings in Auckland over the last few months. Unfortunately, the only one of those more recent shootings to result in deaths. Lisa.
Thanks, Nick. That's our reporter Nick Trubridge at the scene of that shooting on Barry's Road in Glendine. It is almost 9 minutes past 5. Kia amo tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Christchurch Hospital's postponing outpatient appointments and procedures to free up medical staff for more serious cases as Canterbury's health services heave under COVID and winter ills. High levels of acute respiratory illnesses, pressure on the emergency department and a lot of sick staff have forced the move, with COVID cases forecast to keep rising over the next few weeks. One day this week, the hospital had 111 inpatients with COVID, its highest number yet. Becky Hickmott is the Executive Director of Nursing for Te Whatu Ora, Waitaha, Canterbury, and joins us now. Can you start, Becky, by telling us what appointments and procedures are on the back burner?
Yes, thank you. All of our outpatient activity has been cancelled, Lisa, apart from some very crucial pieces, which is our maternity, our cancer cases, the eyes for eye injections, and our colonoscopies. All other urgent and non-deferrable cases will be seen. So it's more the ones that we could safely, at this stage, cease, anything that's non-urgent.
So what actually are they, Becky? What kind of procedures and appointments?
So, as I said, it's everything. The list is huge if I listed it all, but everything else.
Just give us a few examples would be helpful so people can understand what kinds of things are being postponed.
Yeah, so we have a number of, for instance, post-surgery patient appointments that occur. That there's a check that comes after a certain period of time. So there's a number of things like that that's been cancelled. As I said, if there's anything like
So do you mean cancer checkups?
No, not cancer. Anything that's cancer-related is not cancelled.
Okay. So again, Becky, some examples, please. What kind of procedures have been postponed?
I don't have the whole list in front of me, Lisa, but I could give those to you and I can send those through to you.
So you can't give me a single example of a procedure that's been postponed?
Yes, well, I just described to you some things. For instance, post-operative care is one of the key things that have been cancelled. But if there's any other examples that you would like to have, you certainly can send them through. But we do a number of different procedures within the outpatient department. I'd be struggling at this stage to give you a whole list or even to give some examples that weren't actually like things like cancer care and maternity care, all those things. But if it was, say, gynae or some other those things, that there are a number of gynae procedures that could be cancelled as a result of it. There are those things that would be going on.
So this is until August, the end of August, quite a long time. How many patients are going to be affected by this?
Hundreds of patients will be affected by this, and we are absolutely devastated to have to do that with our patients. But
how many hundreds, Becky? Are we talking more than 1,000?
Potentially, that could be the case. We can also give that information through to you. I don't have that data right at my fingertips at the moment, but we certainly can give that to you. But the challenge for us, Lisa, as you are aware, is that our numbers are escalating by the day. So we have the highest record numbers of COVID patients and in the inpatient area. We also have the highest record number of sick staff off sick. So we have over 300 staff who've got COVID, and another 300 staff are off, in addition to with other respiratory and other illnesses. So it is having quite an impact. We've had over 800 staff in total off during this week alone. So
it's a crisis?
I wouldn't say it's a crisis. We always have issues with after hours and after winter care. You know, when we have all these sort of situations occur with winter, we have a number of different situations occur where we have winter illnesses all every season this happens. It's just compounded quite significantly by COVID. And so our teams are under stress and under pressure, but we're doing everything we can do. And this is one of the actions we've had to take to be able to reduce the pressure.
I understand everybody is under pressure and doing their absolute best. But for the people whose appointments have been put on the back burner, this is, significant. And what I want to know from you, is it going to mean poorer health outcomes for those people, reduced quality of life, or could it make their condition worse?
So we do know that when we take this step, it doesn't always have a situation where we can absolutely quickly put steps in place to rectify it. So if we have a prolonged procedure, but what we do know is our primary care physicians are aware of this.
So Becky, just a second, please, if you can pause there.
Sure.
Are you telling me that because you are postponing these procedures and appointments, you don't yet know when you can do them further down the track, so it could be quite a significant delay with potential health consequences?
Yes, so our staff are triaging those patients all the time, and also so our primary care. So our primary care physicians know that they are to escalate through to our area if there's any deterioration, and they follow the normal pathways of escalation.
But you can't guarantee, Becky, that someone's condition is not going to worsen, or they're going to have poor quality or reduced quality of life while they sit on a list waiting for a callback.
As I said to you, Lisa, I think the major problem we've got right now is how do we safely deliver care to the most vulnerable of our patients right now. So this is why we've had to take the action we've taken.
So will some of these patients have been deferred or postponed before when you came under pressure? So this is their second time round?
Potentially there will be some people that is the case, but I'm not sure of the data of that, but we can provide that for you.
Can they go anywhere else, Becky?
The South Island region, Te Waipunamamu, is looking at ways that we can, if there's any capacity in the system, to be able to help support each other, so that we are looking at that right now. But as you know, across the nation, everyone's in a very similar state, so it's quite a similar process happening across all areas as we rise up this curve.
So, Becky, you are considering the options to transport some of these people to other centres for their procedures or appointments. That's currently under investigation.
Sure. If there's other areas that can take on those procedures, they will do that. We're looking at that across, as I said, for all areas. We're looking at across each region to see what we can do to help support.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. That's Becky Hickmott, who's the Executive Director of Nursing for Te Whata Ora Waitaha, Canterbury. Mask up and save lives. That's the message from experts and your average punter as COVID cases and hospitalisations surge across the Motu. Even as COVID accounts for about 1 in 10 deaths in New Zealand, lackadaisical mask wearing is becoming increasingly common. Timothy Brown reports.
Auckland University epidemiologist Rod Jackson sympathises with the public view. He's over the pandemic as well, but says unfortunately the pandemic isn't done with us.
If you spoke to anyone working in a hospital, they would be even more passionate about wear a bloody mask because, the sharp end of COVID is happening in hospitals and in mortuaries at the moment. And just that most people don't see it.
Dr Jackson says the general public, many of whom have caught COVID and dealt with a mild case themselves, are sheltered from the severe end of the disease. But the numbers are startling.
It's in the order of 1 in 10 of all deaths at the moment, if not more. But, fortunately to most people, death is not something they experience every day, like in their families, etc. So hospitalisation and death are invisible to most people. It is an issue. Trying to motivate people when they don't see the problem is extremely difficult.
New Zealand is on track for one of its deadliest years ever, and certainly since World War II. Dr Jackson says better vaccines provide the long-term solution. But with the 7-day average of cases approaching 10,000 again and climbing, now may be the time to reassess mask mandates, especially in schools. Southern DHB Deputy Chair and Otago University Professor of Public Health, Peter Crampton, says mask-wearing attitudes need to change and quickly, or stronger rules may be needed to force the issue.
I've got many health professional friends and colleagues who've been working throughout the entire COVID pandemic in high-risk circumstances for the transmission of COVID, and with conscientious basic measures like mask wearing, hand washing, etc., they've avoided getting COVID. And if they can avoid getting COVID, so can we all.
Dr Crampton says a belief among some that catching COVID is inevitable isn't helping.
I think that the fatalistic viewpoint, to the extent there is one, is very unhelpful. And it's not true. It doesn't reflect reality. If we are apathetic and complacent, then yes, we certainly increase our chances of getting COVID. But it's not a certainty. People do not have to get COVID.
There's a perception that mask wearing becomes increasingly uncommon the further south you get. But Destination Queenstown Chief Executive Matt Woods says he believes that's more about setting than attitude.
I think that what we notice in Queenstown, though, is there is a lot of outdoor space, and so a lot of outdoor well-ventilated space. And it was interesting, I just went through Wellington last week, and you definitely notice what you'd perceive to be more mask wearing in Wellington, but I think that's because you're in a lot more indoor space. We're here, we're actually enjoying the outdoors.
He says even with visitor numbers climbing, they're complying with the rules once they learn what they are. and continued mask wearing has strong support from these Dunedin residents.
With our work, we notice we wear the N95s all the day, and we're noticing other staff aren't catching it off the other staff that have caught it from outside of work.
I'll always have my mask, yeah, and I'll always wear it in public places as much as I can.
We all know the deal, put them on. It's not that difficult, just wear the masks.
However, views are more mixed about whether they need to be mandatory.
Definitely think indoor locations is a good idea. It's hard with school.
I think there's been so much resistance to masks and mandates that it's probably buying into a hornet's nest, actually.
I trust New Zealanders to do what's best for everyone, and I think you just do what you can.
So whether it's helping to keep Queenstown's fragile workforce fit and well, or supporting frontline medical staff, or keeping Aotearoa's more vulnerable communities safe, the message is clear. Put your bloody mask on.
And on that note, some of you getting in touch already about the pressure that Christchurch Hospital is under. This listener says if more people in Christchurch wore their masks, the hospital might not be so inundated and having to cancel appointments. The government needs to do more to educate people as to why they should be wearing our masks. And Michaela's got in touch to say, I'm one of the ones to be postponed. I don't care. My life is not on the line. Yes, I will suffer in silence till it's safe for me to move forward. And yes, my surgery was postponed 2 years ago and I still don't care. Interested in your thoughts on that, Homai o Whakaro. Let us know if you are one of the people who's had your appointment, surgery or procedure cancelled at Christchurch Hospital because it's overwhelmed at the moment with inpatients. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us Checkpoint, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Let's go to the headlines now. Ko iwi anō tēnei.
Kia ora, Lisa. One person has been taken into custody after 2 people were killed in a shooting in Auckland this afternoon. The police say they responded to a report of a gunshot outside a house in Glendine. On arrival, 2 people were found dead. Cordons are in place on Barry's Road and locals are asked to avoid the area. An Auckland University epidemiologist says COVID is currently accounting for about 1 in 10 deaths, and mask wearing is one of the most effective ways to reduce transmission. The government yesterday increased availability of medical masks and tests to combat the rising wave of COVID cases, but isn't reintroducing mask mandates. The Ministry of Health has reported 10,470 new COVID-19 community cases today, and hospitalisations have increased to 773. 16 people with the virus have died. The Cook Islands Emergency Management Director says a storm that sent water surging the furthest inland in a decade is a highly unusual weather event, and the country's meteorological service says both northern and southern parts are expected to get another lashing of wild weather overnight. The powerful swells have already caused damage to roads and properties. And the Foreign Ministry in Singapore says Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who's resigned as President of Sri Lanka, has not asked for asylum. Sri Lankans defied a curfew in the capital, Colombo, to celebrate Mr Rajapaksa's resignation following days of mass protest. Looking at traffic on the main routes, in Auckland, that road closure in Barry's Road due to the ongoing police investigation into a shooting has disrupted traffic and bus routes in the Te Atatu area. Expect delays. Also in Auckland, there was a significant concrete spill before 5 p.m. on State Highway 1 after Takanini heading south. That closed all lanes. That's been cleared, but there may be residual delays. I'll update you with the latest headlines and traffic at 5:40.
Kia ora rā e ho. The Mayor of Christchurch says the new Te Kaha Stadium is the final piece in the jigsaw puzzle for the rebuilt central city. A fixed price contract has been negotiated for the $683 million multi-use arena after an initial budget blowout of $150 million. But who's going to pay for it? Samantha G went to find out.
On the streets of Christchurch today, many were pleased to see the stadium project signed off.
I'm happy. I think it's about time, to be honest. It feels very delayed, so I think it's a good action and ready to go forward with it.
It's pretty good to see it's actually on the roll, eh? The stadium looks pretty good too. The way it's set up, it looks awesome, eh? I'm pretty excited for it.
Some weren't bothered by the cost or the potential increase in rates.
If it's going to be potential for the city to be expanded into being a better city, I don't see the cost being that bad, you know?
So there's a huge cost, but I think it had to go ahead sooner or later. We had to have a stadium. rates are going to rise. I've looked at what that rate rise is likely to be, and I don't think it's excessive.
Others were clear on whether neighbouring councils should be chipping in on the cost.
They absolutely should be. They will be driving from Selwyn and from Waimak, and they will be going and using that stadium all the time. I do not understand why they're not paying for it.
Actually, I live in the Selwyn district, and to be honest, I would be happy if the Selwyn and the outer districts helped pay for it, because we're going to be in here using it.
Councillors yesterday voted in favour of pumping an extra $150 million into the project, but it's raised questions about how that shortfall will be funded. Outgoing Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalzell says there's a range of options, from rates increases to asset sales or co-investment.
I mean, the truth is that stadiums across the world require subsidies. So you could talk to other councils about whether a public asset remaining in public ownership would be able to be shared across a wider group of councils. Why wouldn't you have that conversation?
The mayors of all three surrounding districts say they have not been approached about making a financial contribution. In Hurunui, Mayor Māori Black says with no formal request before council, the appetite for a cost-sharing model had not been debated.
The raw reality is that a formal request hasn't come to our council, and so we haven't had the debate around our council table whether there is a willingness for that cost-share arrangement.
Selwyn Mayor Sam Broughton says his council would consider funding, while Waimakariri Mayor Dan Gordon says if his council was asked, that would require community consultation. Christchurch City Councillor Sarah Templeton voted against spending another $150 million on the stadium and says residents are worried about potential rates increases and seeing other key projects cut.
We need to look for a range of funding options, and asking our neighbours for a contribution is a really sensible idea. When it comes to the rates impact, it's the operational expenses every year that it would make the most difference with.
Mackenzie District Mayor Graham Smith says the stadium will be great for Christchurch, but the council couldn't offer any financial support.
While some of our people would definitely benefit from going to Christchurch for functions, they also go to Dunedin. So as a small council, we would be concerned and don't have funding to be able to help Christchurch build this event.
The government has pledged $220 million to the Takaha Stadium, but won't cover any cost overruns.
Timaru's mayor says he'll poll his council on whether the town should pay towards Christchurch's newly greenlit stadium, but he's pretty sure he knows the answer already. No. It's been suggested other Canterbury councils could kick in to help Christchurch cover the cost, with National MP Jerry Brownlee floating the idea of a contribution based on population size. So Checkpoint pulled out an old hat and called Timaru Mayor Nigel Bowen to see if he had some coins for the cause.
You know, it's not a discussion we've had at all. And if you ask people in the street or even councillors around the table, I don't think there'd be a lot of support.
Why not? Don't they want a stadium that they can go and see the ABs and 660, Guns N' Roses, Ed Sheeran? Don't you want that for your people?
Oh, look, very much so. But we're sort of caught in the middle. We're 160 k's away from Christchurch. You know, we're not. It's not too much further to get to Dunedin, and a lot of people travel to Dunedin for just that reason as well. So, 160 k's is a tall order to ask for support. I do think, though, there is, probably a good case for, further support. And I think the best case for that is, if you look at the New Zealand Inc. conversation with stadiums across the country, Te Papa or what have you, there's, good reason that they should have funding through central government and possibly ongoing funding. But I don't think it should be on the ratepayer of Timaru for this one.
So Nationals' Jerry Brownlee reckons the broader councils around Canterbury should kick in, right? Pro rata, according to your population, would be a fair deal because everybody's going to benefit from it. Your response?
We've got our own stadiums, our own projects that we have to fund, and I just think it's a little bit, out of the box to be asking us so far away. So, big no to Jerry on that one.
But Nigel, you'd travel up there for the concert of your dreams, wouldn't you? To go to an All Blacks game or whatever, you'd go to the stadium, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. We'll get.
Okay, so why don't you want to pay?
It's a fair question. I just think if we took that to our population in Timaru, I know exactly what they'd be saying.
So tell me, what exactly would they say?
they would be saying no. I would have a guess that would probably get 90% against. Bearing in mind, too, you've got probably 50-50 support base for Christchurch and Dunedin, supporters of Canterbury or supporters of Otago based in Timaru. So, I mean, there's a fair case that if we're supporting a stadium in Christchurch, then perhaps we should be supporting a stadium in Dunedin, and no one's asking us to support ongoing costs for that one either. Look, I agree that it's great, but I think it's part of that New Zealand Inc. conversation, and it's a real tax and a real burden on ratepayers ongoing these facilities. So I think there needs to be a real look at how you fund these key infrastructure projects that benefit all New Zealand ongoing, and I think that's direct taxpayer support.
So if you're not going to throw anything into the hat in a formal sense, would you consider facilitating contributions? Here's an example, Nigel. Bear with me. You could put a voluntary payment on the rates bill for $144, right? And if they want to kick in, then you're just the conduit for forwarding the money on. Would you do that?
Oh, look, it's probably not as easy said than done, but, if people want to support it...
If you wanted to make it happen, Nigel, you could.
Definitely. If people want to support it, I'm sure they could. But, we've got lots of great projects that people from Canterbury, come down and other users of in Timaru as well, and they're not paying for them. So, I think it's where you draw the line.
Isn't that the problem, though? Everyone wants the fun stuff and the good times and the concerts and the All Blacks and other sports events, but nobody wants to pull their wallet out of their pocket.
No, and look, and that's why I keep pointing to that New Zealand Inc. conversation. There's so many things at that level that New Zealand does need. And if you look at the stadiums in all the big cities, yes, we need them, and they should be funded, but it's really hard for that taxpayer base in, that metro city to be able to, support that ongoing. And so I think that's where, the New Zealand taxpayer should be stepping in, and it's the cost is socialised that way.
The people of Timaru are New Zealand taxpayers.
Yeah, don't disagree, but it's probably a lot easier to fund these things through ongoing tax than it is through rates. There's got to be a model that works, and challenge the central government politicians to find a means by which this can happen. I'm sure there is one.
Okay, bear with me, Nigel. Think of this beautiful stadium. It's complete. What's your dream act that you would want to go and see there?
Oh, Dream Act. Look, it would be great. I've spent a few years living in Christchurch. It would be great to see the All Blacks, back in Christchurch. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But, so many events. And definitely you'll get lots of support from Timaru residents. But
so
no
for the ABs, that would be your number one thing. You'd be keen to go to the stadium to see the All Blacks pay.
Yeah, I think that would be momentous to have the All Blacks.
Okay, Nigel, that's $144. Would you dip into your pocket then? You personally, if you're not gonna levy the people of Timaru, would you personally commit to kicking in $144 a year for 3 years? Is basically what they're saying, to cover the cost. Would you do that to go see your All Blacks?
Yeah, personally, I'm comfortable with that, but you're putting it on a ratepayer base that. There's a variety of, socio-economic conditions. So it's not quite as simple as that. And, we're, demanding people that can't afford to pay, and that won't ever get to those, games. So, look, I think there's a model out there that will work, but, the wider Canterbury model, the closer you get to Christchurch, maybe there's a fair argument. But, it's probably no different than asking, Hamilton residents to pay for stadiums in Auckland, or you can have the examples throughout the country. Do the wider Wellington area, further out, 160 k's out, do they pay for the Wellington Stadium? I don't have the answer for that, but that's what you're asking.
Okay, Nigel. So Nigel Bowen times 3 years, $144. That's your pledge. Or give a little. Is it? Is that what we're resorting to?
Well, it might be the best means to do it. But look, I'm happy to support it, and I will support the stadium. But the wider, benefit is certainly not there. We don't get any benefit out of hospitality. We don't get any, better benefit out of, motels or any of those sort of things. So, the ask for Timaru ratepayers to support it. Look, happy to do some informal polling and ask the question at our next meeting, but I'm pretty sure the answer that I'll get.
And that's Timaru Mayor Nigel Bowen. It is 27 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. And it's time for the business news. Ko taku hoia I nai ko Anan Zaki. Anan, manufacturing has declined for the first time since the August lockdown last year. Tell us more.
Kia ora, Lisa. Yeah, June wasn't a great month for the manufacturing sector. It's contracted, with COVID absenteeism being the leading cause there for the falling output. We have this monthly survey from BNZ and Business New Zealand, and yeah, it's the first time since the August lockdown last year that the sector has contracted. Obviously, with sick staff, either through COVID or your traditional winter illnesses, which have seemed to come back pretty strong this year, that's affecting production, which is down. Now, supply side issues are still persisting as well. We, of course, keep hearing about the ongoing labour shortages, but probably a little bit more worryingly for the sector, new orders are down, which means that demand is slowing. Now, BNZ are saying that it could be down to tightening monetary policy, falling house sales, or spending now heading towards travel, with the borders reopening, of course. And it sort of followed a trend in recent months where new orders were growing but at a slower pace. And although this time around new orders have actually shrunk, so BNZ said that is a little bit concerning. But on the positive side, they are expecting a solid bounce in economic growth figures for the second quarter, although the weak manufacturing numbers might take some of the gloss of that. But we won't find out those GDP numbers until around about mid-September.
Anan, I'm struggling to get my head around this next one, so please explain it in terms that I can understand. BMW, right, the car company, is charging New Zealand owners a subscription fee for using heated seats. How does that work?
Yeah, you heard that right. Look, some might argue this is peak capitalism. So you buy your brand spanking new BMW, which, let's be honest, probably cost you an arm and a leg anyway. It's a cold winter's morning and you want your bum to be nice and warm. That'll cost you $30 a month. Thank you very much. Or if you want unlimited access, that'll cost you $640.
How do they control that, Anan, though? Isn't that independently controlled in your vehicle?
Well, no, this is the trick they've done. So the equipment is built in to the car you've bought. It just has a software block to make you pay for the privilege of warmer bums, so to say. So this is all part of a privilege, or this is all part of a trend from BMW over the past couple of years. They've been putting more and more services on subscription, like heated steering wheels as well, sporty car sounds, yep, you heard that right, and certain types of lighting as well. Now, BMW are arguing that being able to add new features can be helpful for owners who change their minds after buying their brand new car. And they say it's especially useful for second-hand car owners, as they now have the chance to add features that the original owners didn't use. So, look, I'm not too sure about this one, Lisa.
Sounds a bit like in New Zealand, you pay extra for the bag and the meal, and this time getting your bum warmed up. All right, let's head to the markets, Anan.
Yeah, look, the local top 50 index closed the day down 65 points, or 0.6%, to 11,123. The New Zealand dollar is at 61.2 US cents and 91 Australian.
Thanks, Anan. Ka kite Anan Zaki there with Business News. Gearing up for a Friday night takeaway delivery? Well, be warned, some restaurants are allegedly cooking up extra charges that could be breaking retail laws. An investigation by advocacy group Consumer NZ found some pizza joints are tacking extra costs on menu items, despite also charging a delivery fee. John Duffy from Consumer New Zealand's here with the details. So, John, can you explain to me, how does this work? What's happening?
Well, there's a difference between delivery and pickup, right? So most people would expect that they pay a set fee for delivery. What we've discovered when we've had a close look at this is that, particularly when you're ordering online, if you go into, let's say, Pizza Hut's website and you select pickup, because you can get in there and pick the pizza up, you'll be charged one price. So one item we looked at was a meat lover's pizza, $15.39 for that pizza if you go and pick it up. If you select delivery rather than pick up, that pizza rises in cost to $18.49, and then there's a delivery charge added on top of that. So the total cost of delivery is actually closer to $11, but you're being told that it's $7.99 just for the delivery fee. So we think that's misleading.
And just tell me, John, if I was particularly hungry and I didn't just order a pizza, I ordered chips and a milkshake and a couple of other things, are they effectively sticking a surcharge on every single item in your order?
Yeah, that's what seems to be happening. So the more you buy, the higher that delivery component or that delivery premium goes on your order.
Well, how does that work? Because they're already charging you a separate fee, like $8 or whatever it is to deliver it. That's supposedly the fee to deliver it.
Yeah, well, that's the exact question that we're asking. How can companies get away with saying delivery costs $7.99 when actually, if you elect delivery, it costs quite a lot more than that to get the product delivered? So we think that the representation that delivery is only $7.99 or whatever the case may be, depending on the company that you're using, is a misrepresentation, because getting that product to your house costs, more than that fee.
How widespread do you reckon this is?
Well, we started off with the pizza industry and have seen that Domino's is doing something similar, although they've made some amendments having been contacted by us. KFC are doing it, Taco Bell is doing it, Carl's Jr., and we also see similar behaviour with some of these third-party delivery services like Uber Eats, Delivery Easy, Menu Log. So if you log into and have a look at the actual menu of the restaurant that you're ordering from, you'll see that the prices are a whole lot cheaper. But we think there's a fundamental difference there. So consumers would probably expect that if they're using a third-party delivery service, there'll be some ticket clipping along the way. The issue here is transparency. People need to know what component of what they're totally paying, what the total price they're paying is made up of delivery.
So you've been hitting some of these chains up, right? What is the justification they're giving for this?
Well, most of them have gone to ground, to be honest, and not responded to our inquiries, particularly Pizza Hut, which stands out as one of the worst. We've not heard anything back from them through our inquiries, so we've taken the next step and referred this matter to we will be referring this matter to the Commerce Commission, because we think this needs to be investigated under the Fair Trading Act.
Thanks for your time tonight. That's John Duffy from Consumer New Zealand there. So check out your receipts and your online order. You might be getting stung a whole lot more for delivery. It is 20 minutes to 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Homai o whakaaro, send us your feedback on anything you've heard on the program this evening. If you're in one of those Canterbury councils but not Christchurch City, well, are you prepared to kick in for the stadium? How much? $144 a year for 3 years? You keen or not? And tell us why. Also, have you noticed that, seems to be a bit of a rort with delivery of takeaways and apparently quite widespread. What is your experience? 2101 on the text. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or drop us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Let's head to the headlines. Anea Iwi, mina pita kōrero.
Kia ora, Lisa. One person is in custody after police responded to a shooting in West Auckland that left 2 people dead. The police say they responded to a report of a gunshot outside a house in Glendine this afternoon. Cordons are in place on Barry's Road and locals are asked to avoid the area. And a local board member in West Auckland is calling for stricter firearms control following the shooting. Henderson Massey local board member Peter Chan says the government needs to take urgent action. The government has introduced new measures to combat rising COVID-19 cases and help out hospitals overrun by winter illness. Access to antiviral medicines and medical masks have been expanded and rat tests are now free, but an Auckland University epidemiologist says reintroducing mask mandates may be needed. Local Government NZ's president says some councils and water suppliers have a lot of work to do after a report found about 300 suppliers had water containing unsafe levels of chemicals or bacteria. And damaging heavy swells continue to hit the Cook Islands. The country's meteorological service says both northern and southern parts are expected to get another lashing of wild weather overnight as a high-pressure system pushes strong winds over the country. Infrastructure has already been damaged after unexpected sea surges hit the coast over the past 2 days. Looking at traffic on the main routes, nothing further to report beyond those disruptions in Auckland to the Glendine Te Atatu area following that ongoing police investigation and the significant concrete spill just south of Takanini that closed lanes earlier and is causing delays. Our next news and weather is at 6.
Thanks, Evie. A new water service regulator warns it will take action against councils and anyone else who supplies contaminated drinking water. Taumata Arowai was set up in March under the Water Services Act, and its first report shows hundreds of contaminated water supplies could be making people sick. Sally Wenley compiled this report.
Most New Zealanders drink water from council supplies, and new figures show that hundreds of water sources didn't meet compulsory standards. Taumata Arowai is one of the 3 pillars of the government's Three Waters reform program and was established to monitor the provision of safe and reliable drinking water. The chief executive says its first annual drinking water report released today says bad bacteria and chemicals were found in nearly 300 samples. Bill Bayfield says it will take years to get all water suppliers up to an acceptable standard.
The challenge that's telling us is that basically all water suppliers in New Zealand need to take a step up in terms of consistent delivery of safe drinking water to everybody they serve every day.
Mr Bayfield says it's not just councils that will have to improve their water infrastructure, but small private suppliers as well, and they have 4 years to achieve this.
So it could be just a matter of 3 or 4 batches sharing a spring at a beach. It could be a farming community that maybe supplies 4 or 5 farms off a particular spring or a particular stream in the hill country. There's a huge variation, a huge variety.
Mr Bayfield says in the past there's been a significant underinvestment in resources to provide safe drinking water, and thankfully that's already changing. This comes as a relief to people living in Havelock North who went through a Campylobacter contamination in their water supply 6 years ago. Up to 4 people died and thousands of people were unwell. One of those affected was Lucy Dobbs, who says her son was very sick for nearly a year. She applauds the stricter monitoring.
Well, I just congratulate them. I congratulate the government, and I also congratulate local government, because I think that, yes, we had a problem, but they're working to solve it, and I think that's fabulous.
Some councils are concerned the new rules will be too difficult for small water suppliers to achieve. But despite that, Local Government New Zealand supports the regulatory authority. Local Government President Stuart Crosby says major improvements are needed in many council-owned water supplies.
Oh, look, it's not a surprise, and our whole sector has been very supportive of an independent water regulator, now Taumata Arowai. So this is one of their first major reports coming out, and it'll set a good baseline in terms of the quality of our waters.
Stuart Crosby says councils are currently investing tens of millions of dollars to make improvements to their drinking and wastewater systems. He adds there will be no excuses for failures in the future and warns that all councils will face significant fines if they don't improve the quality of their drinking water.
It's 13 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Inflation is running red hot. Rent, groceries, petrol, but don't despair. Wellington's Welsh Dragon Bar has got your back and your belly with a cost of living burger on its way, and it'll be less than $10, but it's hoped people will pay a little more for a good cause. Now, the bar would normally be part of Wellington on a Plate, a month-long celebration of food in August, but it's decided to do this instead. Hannah Williams is the General Manager of the Welsh Dragon Bar and is on the line now. Hannah, what's a cost of living burger? Describe it to me.
The cost of living burger is a beef burger with rarebit, a traditional Welsh rarebit, cheese sauce. Just a simple burger, and obviously you can see that with the cost of price as well.
So why did you decide to do a cost of living burger?
We just thought about what we could give back to the community, how we could help benefit our customers, and the idea to support a local charity as well along the way.
Yeah, so $9.76. Can you break it down a bit for us? Where is the cost in the burger?
Our cost included in that price is the ingredients, the labour for our kitchen, our overheads, our electric, gas, all those kind of things. That's all included, and that's exactly our cost for each burger.
Yeah, so it's not just what goes into your mouth, it's the, as you say, the infrastructure that it takes to build the burger.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So why are you selling it to people at cost?
We just want to help raise awareness about the cost of living in New Zealand at the moment. We want to help our community see that that's what it's going to cost for a burger, bring people in, they can just have that burger as it is. And then if, obviously, we're doing it with Wellington City Mission, the donation for that is voluntary donation. So we're not going to ask for that included in the price. That's completely up to the person that's buying the burger.
All right, so if you come in and order a cost of living burger, it'll cost you $9.76. But what you're hoping is people will kick in a little bit extra, and that goes to the mission.
100%, yeah. So the cost of living burger itself, that is exactly what it costs us to produce and serve the burger. And then we're going to ask the people if they would like to donate. If they don't, that's absolutely not a problem. They can more than welcome to come in for just the burger. That's an option, and it's totally up to each person.
We're quite greedy monsters here at Checkpoint. How much is it for a side of fries?
For a side of fries, around $8 to $9, and again, that's optional. That's obviously where we would make any money, but that is again an option. Yeah.
Hey, so cost of living, a lot of talk about inflation. How much have you noticed a bump in the price of the ingredients that you use?
Yeah, it's obviously gone up, and that's why we've also came to this idea. When we were looking at the cost of making a burger, the cost of the expense for somebody to prepare, then serve, all those kind of things come into the same perspective, including the cost of ingredients. So, yeah, obviously that's a noticeable for everybody, I think.
Hannah, have you taste tested this?
I have, yes, yeah.
Okay, and what's your assessment?
Oh, it's a lovely burger. I mean, what you're getting for $9 is top-notch, and it's as simple as you can get it, whilst being as tasty as you can get it as well.
Hannah, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. Have you got a score for the rugby? All Blacks versus Ireland?
Oh,
or just a team, Hannah. We can keep it simple.
Just a team. I'm going for All Blacks at the moment. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you seem to be hesitating, Hannah.
I think it's one of those ones that you can just see on the night, really. Yeah, we're excited for the big weekend, though.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. That is Hannah Williams, who's from the Welsh Dragon Bar there. Cost of living burger, launched in August, $9.76. If you pay extra, it goes to the City Mission in Wellington. We've made it to the end of another winter week, and some of you are probably thinking about heading out for a few drinks. But in the middle of a pandemic, just how risky is this? And what's the chance you'll get a side of COVID with your cocktails? We sent Farah Hancock on a pub crawl to find out.
I'm taking one for the team. I'm in central Auckland and I'm about to make the most of Friday night happy hour. For work. My plan is to bar hop my way through the CBD and Ponsonby. But it's not all fun. With me, I have a carbon dioxide monitor. It's going to tell me how fresh the air is in each bar I go into. Here's University of Auckland aerosol chemist Dr. Joel Rindelab to explain the science.
When people are inside a room, they're going to be expelling CO2. So the more CO2 released, the higher the readings, the more particles are potentially in the air.
According to Dr. Rindelab, those particles are spit.
So every time you talk, breathe, or cough, you're emitting tiny little particles into the air that are just going to float around and that other people can breathe in. So you're breathing in someone else's respiratory particles, and then once they get in your body, they can then infect you.
During my pub crawl, I'm safest in bars with CO2 levels under 800 parts per million. If the level is over 1,000, there's a high risk of COVID-19 transmission if someone in the space is infected. Over 2,000, and that's a red flag. It's just after 5 p.m. and I've finished my first drink at an Irish pub. There were about 23 people inside, so it wasn't too busy. The doors were open, letting in a bit of fresh air, and the CO2 reading was 1,001. It's a bit after 8 o'clock. I've been to 4 more bars. The readings have ranged a bit. The lowest was 780 and the highest was 1,595. Now, as the bars are getting fuller, the readings are getting higher. And what I've noticed is the smaller the bar, the higher the reading. It's almost midnight. I've been to a total of 10 bars and I've drunk a lot of cola, sparkling water and Virgin Marys. People are still out partying, but for me, it's time to head home. The highest reading I got tonight was just over 2,600, and that means about 7% of the air I was breathing was air other people had breathed out. The lowest reading was under 1,000. It was around 780, so that wasn't too bad at all. It's not just customers who face catching COVID-19 in particle-laden spaces. Bar staff are in ground zero night after night. Raise the Bar Union represents hospitality workers. Spokesperson Chloe Ann King says hospitality staff work in a high-risk industry.
The music's loud, so when you're at the bar, customers are having to lean in and yell at you at their order, and you can feel their spit on your face. You know, they're drunk.
She thinks CO2 monitors would be a good idea.
If you can't measure the air, you don't know when you need to open a door or whatever, or turn on the aircon or put on a fan at the very least.
RNZ has heard of one bar which does use CO2 monitors. We asked Hospitality New Zealand if it encourages these, but it said it was too busy to be interviewed. So what does Dr Joel Rindelab think of our highest pub crawl reading of 2,624, taken in a small bar with just a few patrons? Would he be keen to visit?
No thanks. No, I'll pass.
But that doesn't mean Friday night drinks are off the table.
I would highly recommend anywhere that has outdoor seating available when it is bars and restaurants, because most people won't be wearing masks, so ventilation is going to be key. I know that might be a little bit more difficult during winter right now, but if you can find a spot like that, I would definitely zero in on it.
The World Health Organization is warning Africa is seeing increasing outbreaks of diseases that spread from animals to people. The WHO says such outbreaks have gone up by more than 60% over the last decade, with a large spike since 2019. The BBC's Will Ross reports.
The zoonotic disease that's often been in the news is Ebola. It's thought that fruit bats are the original hosts, but when the infection has jumped to humans, in several African countries the consequences have been deadly. Other viral hemorrhagic diseases are also on the rise, as are dengue fever, anthrax, plague and monkeypox. The World Health Organization's regional director for Africa, Matshidiso Moeti, says the increase in outbreaks caused by zoonotic pathogens must be taken seriously.
For Africa, the threat is severe. Indeed, new WHO analysis has revealed a 63% increase in the number of zoonotic outbreaks in the African region in the 10 years to 2022 compared to the previous decade. Africa cannot be allowed to become a hotspot for emerging infectious diseases.
The WHO says infections originating in animals have been jumping to humans for centuries, but it thinks the recent increase in zoonotic cases may be due to the fact that Africa has the world's fastest growing population, and that's pushed up demand for food derived from animals, including meat, poultry, eggs and milk. People have also been encroaching on wildlife habitats, leading to more contact with animals. For years, the African continent's notoriously poor transport system provided a natural barrier to stop these viruses spreading. But as villages, cities and even countries are being joined up by road, rail and air, the risk of zoonotic disease outbreaks is increasing. The WHO says it's time for all hands on deck to prevent and control diseases like Ebola, monkeypox and even other coronaviruses.
A lot of you getting in touch about mask wearing too. Stephen says, I'm a 70-something registered nurse, still working full-time. I mask up for every duty, as well as going to the supermarket and any other place I visit. I can't tell you how much hand gel I have used. Plus, I wipe down the handle and rim of the supermarket trolley. More importantly, I have been exposed to COVID-positive people a number of times, including sitting with a person for several hours before they passed away with COVID. I'm not being complacent or smug, but so far, over nearly 3 years, I have remained COVID-free. There is no reason every New Zealander who can wear a mask shouldn't be doing so properly. They might just save a loved one's life. Another person says, there's absolutely a solid group of people in Wanaka and Queenstown who won't wear masks, and the South are more anti-bloody everything. And this is an interesting one too, where the person says, instead of asking about mandatory masks in schools, the question that no one seems to ask is why are the under-16s not eligible for boosters when they are safely being used overseas for this high-spreading age? I would love someone to investigate this, as my 14-year-old has had COVID twice within 4 months. On the stadium, this listener says, I'm similarly finding the topic of Christchurch Stadium hilarious. I don't want my rates to be paying for it either, but I have no choice. Interesting that the Timaru Mayor called it a huge ongoing burden. Nice that someone gets it. Paul's done the maths and says parking for the new stadium will be a huge issue and probably a massive budget blowout. With a capacity crowd, stadium's going to need about 10,000 car parks, which would require 17 hectares of land, emoji, head and hands. Stadium might be built on a budget, but car parking might cost another 200 million, says Paul.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening. Kia ora tātou. Ko Ivy Ashton tēnei. A man is in custody after 2 people were found dead at a West Auckland house. The police were called to Barry's Road in Glendine earlier this afternoon after reports of gunfire. They say the man they're speaking to was located on the Te Atatū Peninsula. Our reporter, Jonty Dine, is at Barry's Road, where he says police are still patrolling the area.
They do have cordons in place at both ends of Barry's Road. There is still a very strong police presence. Police are armed. They are letting residents through to go home, and I did manage to speak to one woman coming out of the cordon who said she called police after hearing what she initially believed to be car backfire, followed by a loud scream. She said it was quite a terrifying experience.
Detective Inspector John Sutton says the shooting was an alarming incident for residents. He says the police are reassuring the community that they're not seeking anyone else. He says the investigation is in its very early stages and the police would like any witnesses to contact them. Auckland University epidemiologist Rod Jackson says a change in public attitude to mask wearing is needed now to save lives. The government yesterday increased availability of medical masks and tests to combat the rising wave of COVID cases, but stopped short of reintroducing mask mandates. Dr Jackson says COVID is currently accounting for about 1 in 10 deaths, and mask wearing is one of the most effective ways to reduce transmission. He says it's also essential people get their vaccines and boosters when eligible. He says the current attitude to mask wearing is concerning and reintroducing mandates may be needed. Destination Queenstown says mask wearing is essential to keeping the tourist resort's fragile workforce operating. The chief executive, Matt Woods, says illness among a short-staffed workforce is hugely disruptive at a time when tourists are returning.
We're very short-staffed, and so we can't afford to have any illness. And so if wearing masks is going to prevent illness and ensure that the small amount of workforce that we have is going to enable us to stay open, we'll ensure that we're actually following those government guidelines to make sure that people can continue to work and not get ill.
Matt Woods says that's why he'd support mask mandates if the government reintroduces them to get through the next few months. Local government New Zealand is warning drinking water suppliers they will face significant fines if they continue to have contaminated water. This follows the first report from water services regulator Taumata Arowai, which says about 300 suppliers had water containing unsafe levels of chemicals or bacteria. Local government New Zealand's president, Stuart Crosby, says some councils and smaller water suppliers have a lot of work to do. Mr Crosby says local local councils are currently investigating why some water supplies are unsafe to drink, and millions of dollars are being invested in improvements. 17 Pacific countries have endorsed the contentious Suva agreement that led to the shock exit by Kiribati from the Pacific Islands Forum. Other Micronesian nations were among the signatories to the document at the Pacific Forum leaders meeting in Suva. Kiribati withdrew from the forum earlier this week, saying its concerns over leadership hadn't been listened to in the agreement. Fiji's Prime Minister, Frank Bainimarama, says he's spoken to Kiribati President Tanes Mamo, affirming the forum's collective agreement to continue dialogue with Kiribati to find a solution. Mr Bainimarama says the door is open for Kiribati to rejoin. A man who spent 20 years in prison after being wrongly convicted of killing the US civil rights leader Malcolm X has sued the city of New York. Muhammad Aziz is seeking $65 million in compensation. He was formally cleared of the crime last November, more than 55 years after it took place. And Christchurch's new Te Kaha Stadium has the green light, but questions remain over how the $683 million complex will be funded. Christchurch City Councillor Sarah Templeton, who voted against spending another $150 million on the stadium, says residents are worried about potential rates increases and seeing other key projects cut.
We need to look for a range of funding options, and asking our neighbours for a contribution is a really sensible idea. When it comes to the rates impact, it's the operational expenses every year that it would make the most difference with.
The mayors of surrounding districts, Selwyn, Waimakariri and Huruni, say they've not been approached about making any financial contribution. Te Maru's mayor says he'll poll his council, but he's pretty sure the answer is no. In sport, the All Blacks coach Ian Foster maintains they've moved on from last week's historic loss to Ireland in Dunedin, and he's confident they're fully prepared for tomorrow night's series decider. Ireland are chasing a first ever series win over the All Blacks, with Foster under enormous pressure to stop that happening following 3 defeats in his last 4 games. He says dwelling on a poor performance in Dunedin will only hurt their chances tomorrow night in Wellington.
We don't want to lose a test, but we have. But to come in and have a big game in front of us like this just means that the eyes go really quickly from looking back to looking forward. And we've had some big days, but that's the way it should be. But the work being done has been fantastic.
The All Blacks have won just 1 of their last 5 games in Wellington. The head of England's men's cricket programme doesn't like the term Bazball, but is surprised just how quickly the Test team's new approach has clicked under coach Brendan McCullum. England had won only 1 of their previous 17 tests when the former Black Caps skipper was put in charge. They then beat New Zealand 3-0 and then toppled India. Director of Cricket Rob Key says the term Bazball doesn't do justice to the hard work put in by McCullum and captain Ben Stokes. And the West's Tigers have appointed Tim Sheens as coach for the next 2 seasons, with Benji Marshall to take over from 2025. That's the news.
On Country Life this week, a pop of colour.
Such a beautiful flower. Sorry.
Come dip your toes in a dahlia patch.
The ladies do tend to swoon when they go down the rows.
It's a bit of a show-off dahlia, isn't it?
It's my kind of dahlia. They're a way to recalibrate your happiness meter.
Shrug off that midwinter gloom with Country Life. Friday at 9 during nights and Saturday morning after the 7 o'clock news on RNZ National.
You're back on Checkpoint with Lisa Owen next. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Saturday. From Northland to Whanganui, including Coromandel Peninsula, Taumarunui and Taihape. A few showers, some are heavy tomorrow from Waikato northwards. For the Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay. A few showers, mainly in the Bay of Plenty and the Gisborne Ranges, clearing overnight or early tomorrow. Isolated showers are developing about the east coast tomorrow. From Manawatu to Wellington and for Wairarapa. A few showers clearing tomorrow morning, but isolated showers will remain about coastal Wairarapa. Fine spells are forecast for Bulla and Westland. A few showers about northern Westland and Bulla. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, scattered showers gradually clearing this evening, becoming fine tomorrow. Fiordland, Otago and Southland, showers with snow above 500 metres. Showers are clearing inland tomorrow morning and fine spells are developing. And for the Chatham Islands, Rekohu, showers, some heavy tomorrow afternoon. It's 8 minutes past 6. I'll update you with the latest headlines at 6:30.
Nā mihi iwi no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Police in the United States are investigating whether Ivana Trump fell down the stairs to her death at her New York home. The 73-year-old had 3 children with former US President Donald Trump, Donald Jr., Ivanka and Eric Trump. The former model and businesswoman was found unconscious near a staircase in her home, and police believe her death was accidental. CNN's Wolf Blitzer looks back on her life.
For more than a decade, Donald and Ivana Trump were New York City's tabloid power couple. After marrying the man she called the Donald in 1977, the Czech-born model and her husband kept an active social calendar.
These people were the new stars of the late 80s.
Ivana was a key partner in several of Donald Trump's projects, supervising design work on Trump Tower, managing some of Trump's other properties, and it all resulted in a uniquely Trump sort of home life.
I was running the 3 casinos in Atlantic City for 10 years, going on helicopter at 7 o'clock in the morning from New York, getting up there, landing on the roof, going to the office, 6 o'clock back home, children, homework.
The Trumps raised 3 children, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, who would later become key players in Donald's business empire and political aspirations. Donald Trump was constantly followed by rumors of infidelity, but the gossip came to a head when Ivana confirmed Trump was having an affair with Marla Maples.
You're devastated, of course. Then it is a stage when you come and you say, why me? You get angry.
Using the same fighting tactic her husband was famous for, Ivana Trump went very public with her divorce battle.
If you're good to him, he's incredible to you. If you're bad at him, you're dead.
But the Trumps had another surprise for the media, a sudden, seemingly amicable settlement, even walking out of the courthouse together, arm in arm.
She's a special woman. Where are you going to dinner? She always will be.
Ivana went on to become an entrepreneur in her own right. She started a fashion line and wrote books. Along the way, she married and divorced her 3rd and 4th husbands, and made a movie cameo as America's most famous ex-wife in the First Wives Club.
Don't get mad, get everything.
Donald and Ivana eventually had a friendly relationship. They even made a commercial together.
You eat our pizza the wrong way.
Crust first.
But as his political fortunes rose, their divorce came back to haunt him. Documents showed that Ivana had accused Donald Trump of raping her during an argument. Trump denied it, and Ivana issued a statement saying that what she called a rape was not intended to be, quote, interpreted in a literal or criminal sense. In 2017, Ivana Trump got pushback from the White House when she suggested that she limit her communications with the president to avoid making First Lady Melania Trump jealous.
And I don't want to cause any kind of jealousy or something like that, because I'm basically first Trump wife, okay? I'm first lady, okay?
A statement from the First Lady's office called Ivana an ex and dismissed her comments as self-serving. Around the same time, Ivana said her ex-husband offered her an ambassador's post to the Czech Republic, where she grew up under communist rule. But she said she turned it down, content with the extravagant life she'd built for herself, even with the public spotlight.
You don't really have a choice. Once you become a public person, you are on the public eye.
The Australian Cabinet will urgently meet next week to discuss the resumption of COVID payments to struggling workers. There were almost 50,000 new cases reported in the country yesterday and 78 deaths, the highest daily toll since early February. Some hospitals are delaying elective surgeries amid massive pressure on the system. From Queensland, here's the ABC's Oliver Gordon.
60-year-old Queenslander Terry Bates lives with a chronic condition.
I have a mitochondrial disease. That means if I catch a virus like COVID, I have vision loss and I will lose more vision permanently. I will lose hearing permanently. My heart will deteriorate permanently if I catch COVID.
With COVID-19 surging, she's staying inside.
There's lots of people with lots of different conditions like me who are actually still having to live in lockdown, not going to shops even because nobody's wearing masks.
It's not just the more vulnerable pleading with members of the public to mask up. Nurse Denny Anderson works at a major metropolitan hospital in Sydney. The union member says the emergency department he's a part of can't keep up.
Highly acute patients are having to wait 8, 10, 12, sometimes 18 hours in the waiting room.
He's hurting.
It's horrible. It's not why any of us became nurses.
He says this third wave is different to the first two.
You know, people have forgotten simple things like hand hygiene.
The COVID surge is impacting healthcare workers outside of major cities too.
The entire sort of medical infrastructure in rural and regional Australia is going to be under strain at the moment.
That's Dr. Marco Giuseppin, the chair of the Australian Medical Association's Council of Rural Doctors.
We don't have the extra support pool of staff that we can draw from to fill in for those people when they become sick.
He says it's critical rural and remote doctors maintain their priority access to the country's stock of antivirals, so people who can't access emergency departments easily can get their hands on the drugs quickly.
It's always hard to know who would have otherwise ended up in hospital, but actually ensuring access to these medications is really critical.
In this latest surge, the proportion of people ending up in hospital is higher than it was in January's Omicron wave, with a number of hospitals under immense strain, including some pausing elective surgeries. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has called a snap meeting of the National Cabinet. He'll face pressure from state premiers over the scrapping of a scheme that provided free rapid tests for concession card holders and the recent ending of the pandemic leave payments. Back in Queensland, highly vulnerable members of the community like Terry Bates are appealing to people to think of them next time they're deciding whether to mask up.
If you pop it on and have that lovely, warm, fuzzy feeling that you're doing it because you're doing me and people like me a real favour, we will be so grateful. So I feel so grateful every time I see somebody in a mask.
At least 23 Ukrainians have been killed in a Russian missile strike on a city southwest of Kiev, far from the front line of fighting. Dozens of others have been injured and more than 30 are unaccounted for. The strikes came from Russian submarines in the Black Sea. CNN's Scott McLean has more.
Mid-morning, a busy commercial district in Vinnytsia, far from any front lines. 3 Russian missiles landed here, obliterating a medical center, severely damaging buildings all around, including offices and a theater. The husks of burned-out cars littered the streets. Rescue workers combed through the smoking wreckage, but amid this destruction, had little hope of recovering anyone alive. Throughout the day, the list of casualties grew. More than 20 people killed, including 3 children. Dozens more injured, many of them in critical condition, others unaccounted for.
Among the victims, 4-year-old killed in her stroller. Her mother was severely injured, according to the child's father.
What the Russians' target might have been as yet unknown. The defense ministry in Moscow has had nothing to say about the attack. The Ukrainians say a total of 7 cruise missiles were launched from the Black Sea. 4 were intercepted. Tragically, 3 were not. People here in a state of shock. Ludmila Gudin and her husband own a business servicing cash machines. In the building next to the crater, the storefront's windows were blown out.
We are living in that beautiful, peaceful city where attacked by rocket. What for?
Olga Mayenko works on the 4th floor. She didn't seek shelter when the sirens went off half an hour before the missiles hit.
We didn't go down into the shelter. We were certain this wouldn't happen here.
Maxim Budko was using an ATM machine next to his photo store. When the blast went off, he used the machine for cover.
The shield, which was my only protection. I was lying on the ground, all covered in glass. I didn't know if I would even survive that moment. And you can go take a look. The ATM machine over there is completely destroyed.
President Vladimir Zelensky was addressing a war crimes conference as the full horror emerged. This is an act of Russian terror, he said. People couldn't do this. They're animals. Into the evening, the work of searching for victims and clearing wreckage continued. This is the third Russian missile attack in the last month alone to have killed more than 20 Ukrainian civilians. And as one Ukrainian official put it, nobody knows where the missiles will land tomorrow or the day after tomorrow.
It's 18 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. US President Joe Biden is in Israel and has signed a joint declaration aimed at curbing Iran's development of nuclear weapons. He's in Jerusalem meeting both Israelis and Palestinians before he'll head to Saudi Arabia to tackle the issue of human rights. The BBC's Jeremy Bowen reports.
Not the Wild West, but the Middle East. For all its power, America's ability to control Middle Eastern turbulence is limited. Joe Biden and Israel's acting Prime Minister Yair Lapid signed a declaration billed as historic. In fact, it had all been said before, but Israel needed him to say it again.
I made it absolutely clear. We will not, let me say it again, we will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon.
For Israel, it starts with a conventional, not nuclear threat, on the heavily fortified border with Lebanon, 3 hours drive north from Jerusalem. It's one of the most dangerous potential flashpoints in the Middle East.
I'll show you a couple places over here.
That's because it's a front line between the Israelis and Iran's strongest ally and client, Hezbollah.
If we'll stand over here like a couple more minutes, we will see people of Hezbollah coming over here.
Both sides have worked hard to keep the border quiet since Hezbollah fought Israel to a standstill in a war in 2006. But when Hezbollah appeared, they were in Israel's sights. Behind the watchers in Lebanon, the Israelis assumed Hezbollah guns were also ready. It took one incident to spark a month of war in 2006.
These men have the job of protecting Israel's northern border, but it's about a lot more than that, because this is one of the great fault lines that runs through the Middle East. On that side, friends of Iran, and on this, friends of America. And the division is dangerous, and it's heating up again.
Israel's already fighting a covert war of assassinations and bombings with Iran. This border would also explode if Israel or the US mounted full-scale airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Are you conscious that behind Hezbollah, down there, is Iran?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We can see that how they acting over here, how they operating in day. It's not my job to say it, but my job is to be over here and protect the tactical things. But we know we can see that in everything that they have, how they acting, how they operating over here, yes.
Back in Jerusalem, what's missing is any attempt to ease the festering Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It used to be the top priority for visiting American presidents. In his progress around the city the Israelis call their eternal capital, President Biden repeated his call for an independent Palestine alongside Israel. On the other side of the wall, Israel has built to separate Jerusalem from the Palestinians of the West Bank. That sounds empty.
He's clearly here for one case only, and it's to help the Israelis and not the Palestinians. He doesn't even care about us.
So many presidents came the last 10 or 15 years, and we did not see any difference in our situation.
Along Joe Biden's route into Bethlehem, his next stop, are accusations that Israel is guilty of apartheid, denied by the Israelis and the US, widely accepted by Palestinians and human rights groups. And he'll see many portraits of Shireen Abu Akleh, the Palestinian-American journalist killed by Israeli troops in May. For this American president, what matters much more are Israel's security, Iran's nuclear plans, and the final leg of his trip to Saudi Arabia.
Boys in Australia as young as 14 will soon be moved from a juvenile detention facility to a maximum security adult jail. The government says it's a necessary move after they caused significant damage at the facility. But the plan in Western Australia is facing growing opposition. The ABC's Isabella Musali reports.
Sarah admits her grandson is no angel, but she's scared and outraged by plans to move him from a juvenile detention facility to an adult maximum security prison.
Like in America, they shoot their kids out in the open. Here they're killing our kids behind doors and don't care. You know, they're not using guns, but they're using their strategies.
Her grandson is one of 20 boys who've been singled out for destroying infrastructure, assaulting staff and harming themselves at WA's Youth Detention Centre, Banksia Hill. But the thought of them moving to an adult prison terrifies relatives who've been protesting in Perth.
What's happening for them to act that way? It's not all their fault. You know, obviously there's something going wrong in that structure at Banksia for those kids to react that way.
The Banksia Hill facility has seen violence and destruction, but its poor conditions have also made headlines. In April, an independent inspector said detainees were subjected to cruel, inhumane and degrading treatment, while the Perth Children's Court president has also raised serious concerns. And the plan to temporarily relocate some detainees has seen fierce criticism from 30 non-profit organisations like Save the Children. The National Children's Commissioner, Anne Hollands, toured the Perth Youth Facility just days before this announcement, and the conditions concerned her. But she says she's genuinely shocked that the government thought this was the answer.
So these are kids who have already been locked up for 22, 23 hours a day, periodically over a long time, in conditions which, you know, were pretty awful, largely, as I understood, due to the lack of staffing. I don't know in detail what are the conditions they will be under in this new place, but all of them will know they are in an adult maximum security prison. These are children who have neurological problems, mental health issues, special needs, and their needs have been neglected. And instead of meeting their needs, we're putting them inside an adult prison.
In a statement, the WA Department of Justice said it's necessary to relocate the group to a safer and more secure place because of unprecedented destruction and attacks on staff. The facility will be separate from the rest of the adult prison, and youth detainees will still be offered the same support programs. The spokesman went on to say it's anticipated the relocation will last up to a year while urgent works are completed, and noted the average stay in youth detention is 37 days. Earlier this year, the WA government also announced a $25 million upgrade for the Banksia Hill Youth Facility.
Sri Lankans have hit the streets en masse to celebrate the resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, defying a curfew in the capital, Colombo. The president has officially stepped down after days of mass protests amid a cost of living crisis. The BBC's Rajani Vaidyanathan has this report.
A moment to savour after months of struggle. Now there's joy. These demonstrators had one key demand, that the man they blame for their economic woes resign. Tonight, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa did.
Protesters say they're celebrating what represents a victory for people power. It's the end of the rule of the Rajapaksas after a week of turmoil on the island.
Just yesterday, at the Prime Minister's office, security forces were overrun by protesters. It was one of a number of government buildings taken over by the masses. Today, protesters handed it back to the authorities. Soldiers now on guard, authorised to use force to maintain order. A country under curfew. Streets once packed with protesters, now patrolled by the military. Elsewhere, tensions are running high. With the basics still in short supply, Only a few weeks of fuel now left in the country. In an exclusive interview, the governor of Sri Lanka's central bank told me that without a stable government, the suffering will continue.
We don't see a way forward and how to provide sufficient foreign exchange to finance essential petroleum for this country. If that doesn't happen, then it will be like whole country would be closed down, no one would be able to do any activity.
The pace of the protests has slowed. A president gone and a country still in limbo. I met Nusli as he stormed the Prime Minister's house yesterday. He wants an interim government to be installed.
We will give the interim government 6 months to maximum of 1 year to settle all this and ease the problems as much as possible. After that, election should happen and people can select who they want to rule the next country next.
But nobody knows who that should be. As they celebrate the end of one chapter in this protest movement, another difficult one is about to begin.
And some of your final thoughts before we head off. A lot of feedback on the stadium, so let's whiz through some of it. Ruth says, why should other councils help out with the stadium costs when the Christchurch City Council has accepted the costs, so presumably knows how to service it? Another listener says, I'm not a stadium goer, but see the desire for others to get a decent facility. How about user pays? A new stadium fee added to every ticket. Similar theme here. Cardiff used a debenture scheme to fund the Millennium Stadium, which replaced Cardiff Arms Park. For a one-off contribution, individuals are guaranteed good seats for events at a discounted price. Selwyn seems pretty keen, the district. I live in Selwyn and will definitely use the stadium for sporting events and concerts, and I'm very happy to pay for this to be built. And another person, this homeowner in the Selwyn district would be more than happy to pitch in for a sparkling roof-covered technology-equipped stadium. Build it and they will come, I say. Not everybody thinks the same, though. Cannot believe Christchurch Council would commit to spending a huge sum before deciding where the money will come from. And it sounds like the hospital needs it too, they say. And this one, if other councils are to pay for the stadium, they should have had a vote on whether it goes ahead. Thanks for all your feedback. Do have a fantastic weekend. That's about all we've got time for. And don't forget, the Late News team will keep you updated throughout the evening. If you want to catch up on any of the stories from Checkpoint, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast from, we'll let you review the program. And don't forget to check out our website. Catch you on Monday.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Kia ora tātou, ko Ivy Ashton tēnei. The police are asking any witnesses to contact them following a shooting in West Auckland. A man is in custody after 2 people were found dead at a Glendine house. An epidemiologist at Auckland University says COVID-19 is currently accounting for about 1 in 10 deaths, and a change in public attitudes to mask wearing is needed to save lives. Local Government New Zealand's president says local councils are investigating why some water supplies are unsafe to drink after a report found about 300 suppliers had contaminated water. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Tomorrow on Mapuna, in the wake of the Pacific